Captain Rebecca Stone gripped the armrest of her command chair as a massive view screen displayed something that defied all her years of space service. The approaching fleet looked like a floating junkyard brought to life. Ships with crystalline hulls that sparkled like diamonds flew alongside vessels made of what appeared to be living wood. Metal constructs with too many angles twisted through space next to organic craft that pulsed with bioluminescent lights. "How many are there, Miller?" Rebecca asked, never taking her eyes off the strange armada. Lieutenant James Miller's fingers danced across his console. 4 to 7 distinct vessels, Captain, but they are not matching any known designs in our database. Each one looks completely different from the others. Chief Engineer David Brooks whistled low from his station. "Captain, I'm reading at least 12 different power signatures. Some of these ships are running on fusion, others on something that looks like contained antimatter, and a few are giving off energy readings I can't even classify." Rebecca watched as one particular ship caught her attention. It was roughly the size of a cruiser, but shaped like a massive flower, its metallic petals opening and closing as it moved. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several of its petal sections were clearly makeshift repairs. "They've seen combat," she muttered. "Recent combat." Communications Officer Patricia Walsh looked up from her station, concern written across her face. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple distress frequencies. Medical emergencies across their fleet. These people are hurt." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Rebecca had served in the outer colony for 8 years, and she'd seen her share of desperate refugees. But nothing like this. These weren't just people running from war. They were the walking wounded of an entire civilization. "Incoming transmission," Miller reported, his voice cutting through her thoughts. The main screen flickered, static lines running through the image before clearing to reveal a face that made Rebecca's breath catch. The woman looking back at her was clearly not human, but there was something achingly familiar in her expression. Her skin had a blue tint like deep ocean water, and her silver eyes held depths that spoke of unimaginable loss. 3 parallel scars ran from her left temple to her jaw, and her dark hair was streaked with premature silver. "I am Captain Diana of the Forsaken Fleet," the woman said, her voice carrying a strength that seemed to cost her everything to maintain. "We seek sanctuary in your space. We have wounded among us, and our ships are failing." Rebecca leaned forward. "Forsaken? I'm Captain Stone of the Earth Defense Force. What exactly does that mean?" Diana's expression shifted, and for a moment, Rebecca saw past the military bearing to the exhausted person beneath. "We are the survivors, Captain Stone, those who refuse to bow to the 3 great empires that rule the galaxy. The hegemonic core demands technological perfection. They cast out or modify any species that doesn't meet their standards. The Stellar Dominion believes in genetic purity. They enslave or exterminate races they deem inferior. The Void Throne controls through psychic domination. They raise the minds of those who resist." As Diana spoke, other faces appeared on subsidiary screens around the bridge. Rebecca saw beings with chitinous armor and compound eyes, creatures that looked like living crystal formations, and humanoid figures with mechanical implants that seemed more like torture devices and enhancements. "We are the ones who said no," Diana continued. "The species that chose exile over submission, death over slavery. We've been running for 3 generations, and now—" Her voice broke slightly. "Now we have nowhere left to run." Brooks stepped closer to Rebecca's chair. "Captain, their lead ship is showing massive hull breaches. I don't think they'll make it another day without major repairs." Before Rebecca could respond, Admiral Thomas Carter's gruff voice crackled through the calm from Earth Command. "Captain Stone, we've been monitoring this transmission. Command has reviewed the available data on these 3 great empires. Intelligence confirms their existence and their reputation for conquest." Rebecca frowned. "Admiral, are you suggesting we grant them sanctuary?" "I'm saying these beings have been fighting tyranny for centuries. Rebecca, their battle records show consistent resistance against impossible odds. They're exactly the kind of allies we might need if the galaxy isn't as empty as we thought." Diana's image leaned forward urgently. "Captain, I must warn you, the empires will come looking for us. They tolerate no independent worlds, no free peoples. If you help us, you'll be marked as rebels against their authority." "And if we don't help you?" Rebecca asked. "They'll come anyway. Diana replied grimly. The empires expand constantly. Your isolation won't protect you forever. At least with us, you'll have people who know how to fight them, who understand their tactics and weaknesses. Rebecca looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Miller was young but steady, his hand unconsciously moving to the photo of his family he kept at his station. Brooks had served in the asteroid wars and knew what it meant to stand against superior forces. Walsh had grown up on the frontier colonies where helping strangers was a matter of survival. Admiral, Rebecca said slowly, requesting permission to escort our guest to Lunar Station for emergency repairs and medical assistance. A pause. Then Carter's voice, warmer now. Granted, Captain. And Rebecca, tell them that O stands with those who fight for freedom. It's what we've always done. Diana's silver eyes widened, genuine shock replacing the careful diplomatic mask. You would risk war with powers that command thousands of worlds. The hegemonic core alone has fleets that could turn your son into a weapon. Rebecca smiled, thinking of her own ancestors who had faced impossible odds and chosen to fight anyway. Captain Diana, we've never been ones to abandon those who need help. Welcome to the Sol system. 3 months of frantic preparation had transformed the Sol system into something unrecognizable. Admiral William Harrison stood on the bridge of the newly constructed battle station orbiting Mars, watching his tactical display with grim satisfaction. What had once been a simple mining operation was now the largest military installation humanity had ever built. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up massive hyperspace distortions at the system edge, reported Commander Helen Phillips, her voice tight with tension. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen. Harrison nodded, having expected this moment since the day they'd welcomed the Forsaken Fleet. Beside him, Captain Diana adjusted her new Earth Defense Force uniform, the Forsaken insignia gleaming on her collar. The past 3 months had changed her as much as it had changed humanity. The exhausted refugee had become a fierce warrior diplomat, teaching human tacticians everything she knew about Empire warfare. How many ships? Harrison asked. Philip's face went pale as she read her instruments. Over 3,000 vessels, sir. They are arranged in perfect geometric formations. I'm reading 3 distinct fleet configurations. The main view screen lit up with an image that would haunt Harrison's nightmares for years to come. Thousands of warships hung in space like deadly jewelry, their hulls polished to mirror brightness. Each vessel was a work of terrible art. The hegemonic core ships were angular and precise, covered in weapon arrays that hummed with barely contained energy. The stellar Dominion fleet consisted of organic-looking vessels that seemed to breathe in space, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with alien life. The Void Throne ships were the most disturbing, black as space itself. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Incoming transmission from the lead vessel, Phillips reported. The figure that appeared on screen made Harrison's skin crawl. Lord Commander Vincent of the hegemonic core was more machine than man, with cybernetic implants covering the left side of his face and glowing optical sensors where his eyes should have been. When he spoke, his voice carried the cold precision of a computer. Primitive humans, Vincent said, his mechanical voice devoid of emotion. I am Lord Commander Vincent of the hegemonic core. You will surrender the criminal refugees immediately or face complete annihilation. You have 1 hour to comply. Harrison glanced at Diana, who now wore the uniform of Earth's newest ally. I'm afraid that won't be happening, Commander. These beings are under our protection. Vincent's remaining organic eye focused on Diana with obvious recognition. Ah, the terrorist Diana. Your crimes against the natural order will finally be punished. Protection. Vincent continued, turning back to Harrison. You primitive creatures have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Your weapons are toys, your ships are scrap metal. Harrison felt his jaw tighten. In the background, he could see his bridge crew, young men and women who had never seen anything like the fleet arrayed against them. But there was no fear in their eyes, only determination. Commander Vincent, Harrison replied, we've been fighting tyrants since we learned to make fire. Earth's answer is no. The first shots came without warning. Beams of pure energy lanced across space, vaporizing the outer asteroid defense platforms in seconds. But instead of the panic Vincent expected, the human response was immediate and chaotic. Lieutenant Michael Roberts found himself at the controls of the cargo hauler Lucky Strike, now hastily converted with missile pods welded to its hull. Beside him in a sleek fighter that looked like it was grown rather than built, his wingman Jake, a Forsaken pilot who'd adopted the human name in honor of his new allies, kept pace despite their mismatched speeds. "Your people fight with such chaos," Jake observed as they weaved through a storm of laser fire. His ship's organic hull shifted and flowed, absorbing impacts that would have destroyed a conventional fighter. "We call it improvisation," Michael grinned, using his ship's industrial loading crane to grab an enemy fighter and hurl it into its squadron mates. "Works pretty well, doesn't it?" The battle that followed defied every tactical manual ever written. Where the Empire fleets moved in rigid, predictable formations, the human Forsaken Alliance adapted constantly. Civilian mining ships became impromptu carriers, launching swarms of fighters from their cargo bays. Construction mechs grabbed enemy missiles with their industrial arms and threw them back. Even passenger liners joined the fight, their civilian crews firing everything from flare guns to welding torches at the pristine Empire vessels. Diana's voice crackled over the comm as she led a squadron of mixed human and Forsaken ships against a Stellar Dominion bio-cruiser. "Remember, their ships are live. Aim for the neural clusters along the spine." The bio-cruiser writhed in space like a wounded animal as human plasma torpedoes found their marks. Its living hull began to regenerate, but not fast enough to prevent critical damage. On another front, Chief Engineer David Brooks had jury-rigged the industrial fabricators on Lunar Station to produce makeshift weapons. "If they want to fight," he muttered, launching a cloud of industrial nanobots that began eating through enemy hull plating, "they picked the wrong species." The most shocking moment came when a void-thrown dreadnought attempted to use its psychic weapons against the human fleet. The dark ship pulsed with malevolent energy, trying to invade the minds of the defenders. But humanity's chaotic, unpredictable thought patterns proved impossible to control. Instead of breaking, the human crews became even more determined. "Their minds are too scattered," Diane explained later. "The Void Throne can't control what they can't understand." When the dust settled 4 hours later, the Empire fleet found itself facing something it had never encountered in 10 millennia of conquest: defeat. Not total defeat, but the kind of bloody nose that shattered the myth of invincibility. Commander Vincent's image appeared on screen one final time, his mechanical face showing what might have been confusion. "This is impossible. We are the masters of the galaxy." "Not anymore," Harrison replied simply. As the Empire fleet retreated, leaving behind smoking wreckage and hastily deployed monitoring stations, something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The three great empires had faced resistance before, but they had never been beaten by what they considered a primitive species allied with their cast-off refugees. More importantly, word would spread. Across 1,000 worlds, slaves and subjects would hear that the mighty empires could bleed, and in the depths of space, other Forsaken fleets would begin turning their ships towards Sol, carrying with them the most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever known: hope. Colonel Jennifer Adams pressed her palms against the curved observation window of Mars Command, watching another wave of refugee ships emerge from hyperspace. The sight still amazed her after 6 months. Vessels that looked like living coral reefs flying alongside ships made of crystallized starlight, all heading toward the growing fleet that now called Sol's system home. "Report? Lieutenant," she said to Andy Foster, her intelligence officer, without turning from the window. Foster's excitement was barely contained as he read from his datapad. "We're seeing uprisings across 17 sectors now. 3 more slave worlds declared independence just this morning. Word is spreading faster than wildfire that someone is finally fighting back against the empires." The command center buzzed with activity as dozens of species worked side by side. A massive insectoid creature with 4 arms operated communication arrays while being that looked like walking Mercury translated intercepted Empire transmissions. At the center of it all stood Admiral Diana, her Forsaken insignia now accompanied by the stars of an allied fleet commander. Diana pointed to the tactical display with one of her mechanical fingers, a replacement for the hand she'd lost in the first battle. "These are the slave worlds of the Outer Rim, Jennifer. The mining planet Kiro 7, the agricultural world New Harvest, the factory moon of Titan's Rest. They've been enchained for 300 years, but now they're asking for help." General Robert Clark, Earth's grizzled commander of joint operations, scratched his gray beard as he studied the holographic map. Red dots marked Empire strongholds, while green light showed worlds in rebellion. We can't liberate them all at once, Diana. The three empires would stop fighting each other and unite against us. That's exactly what we need to avoid. Diana's silver eyes gleamed with a familiar intensity. Then we don't fight to conquer, Robert. We fight to inspire. The plan that emerged over the next week was audacious even by human standards. Instead of massive fleet actions, they would launch simultaneous precision strikes on 3 key worlds. Not to hold territory or destroy installations, but to break the chains and show the galaxy what freedom looked like. Admiral Harrison would lead the main diversionary fleet against the heavily defended world of Prime Station, drawing Empire attention while smaller teams struck their real targets. Captain Rebecca Stone would take her stealth squadron to the propaganda world of Truth's End, where the Empires broadcast their version of reality across 100 sectors. Commander Helen Phillips would lead a mixed human-forsaken team to the Slave Processing Center on Dark Harbor, where captured beings were broken and rebuilt into obedient workers. In the communication bunkers beneath Mars' surface, Mary Campbell worked frantically alongside a team of forsaken technicians who looked like living circuits. The former war correspondent had become the voice of the rebellion, her broadcasts already legendary among the oppressed worlds. "Are you sure this will work?" Mary asked as she watched the alien technicians weave together transmission equipment that seemed to grow rather than be built. Diana knelt beside her, watching the strange organic computers pulse with bioluminescent light. "The Empires rule through fear, Mary. For 10,000 years, they convinced the galaxy that resistance is impossible. Show people they can bleed, and that fear dies." The attacks launched at precisely 0300 Solar Standard Time. Harrison's fleet emerged from hyperspace near Prime Station like an angry swarm, immediately drawing the attention of 3 Empire patrol fleets. While massive battleships exchanged devastating fire in the outer system, Stone's invisible ships slipped past the chaos toward their true targets. On Truth's End, Captain Stone led her commandos through the gleaming halls of the main broadcast facility. The propaganda center was a marvel of Empire technology, crystalline towers that pulsed with hypnotic light, broadcasting submission and despair to billions of minds across the galaxy. "Remember," Stone whispered into her comm as her team moved through the facility, "we're not here to destroy everything. We need those transmitters working when Mary begins her broadcast." The facility's defenders were perfectly trained Empire soldiers, humans who had been genetically modified for absolute obedience. They fought with mechanical precision, but they couldn't adapt when Stone's team began using the building's own security systems against them. Meanwhile, Phillips' assault on Dark Harbor was a nightmare of liberation. The Slave Processing Center was a massive space station where captured beings were stripped of their identity and rebuilt into perfect servants. Phillips watched in horror as a team discovered rows upon rows of beings in various stages of mental reconstruction. "Get everyone out," she ordered, even as Empire reinforcements poured through the station's corridors. "I don't care if we had to carry them to the ships." The most crucial moment came when Mary's transmission went live across the galactic network. Using the Empire's own communication systems against them, her voice and image appeared on every screen, every comm unit, every propaganda display across 17 sectors. "People of the galaxy," Mary began, her voice clear and strong, "you are not alone. You are not forgotten. Today, the chains begin to break." The footage that followed changed everything. Slaves walking free from Dark Harbor, their mental shackles shattered. Empire propaganda towers broadcasting messages of hope instead of despair. Human and forsaken warriors fighting side by side, proving that the mighty empires could be beaten. But the most powerful image was the simplest, a young slave girl from the mining world of Kiro 7, her chains broken, looking up at the stars with hope in her eyes. Within hours, the rebellion exploded across the galaxy. Slave worlds that had never dared to dream of freedom began coordinating uprisings. Factory workers sabotaged production lines. Even some Empire soldiers began questioning orders they had followed without thought for generations. By the end of the week, 40 worlds had declared independence. The 3 great empires found themselves facing something they had never encountered in 10 millennia of rule, a galaxy that was no longer afraid. In the command center on Mars, Diana watched the spreading green dots on the tactical display with satisfaction. "The fire is spreading," she said quietly. And once it starts, empires burn very quickly indeed. Admiral Harrison stood among the twisted metal and shattered glass that had once been Lunar Station's main command center. Through the gaping holes in the station's hull, he could see the approaching nightmare, the largest fleet in galactic history spreading across space like a dark plague. 10,000 years of empire might, finally united against one small blue world. So, final enemy count is over 10,000 capital ships, reported Captain Rebecca Stone, her Earth defense uniform torn and bloodstained from the previous day's fighting. A bandage covered her left eye, and her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had been in combat for 72 straight hours. Harrison's weathered face showed no emotion as he absorbed the numbers. Our forces. 4,000 mixed vessels, sir. Half of them are civilian volunteers who answered the emergency call. Stone paused, looking at the tactical display where red dots vastly outnumbered the scattered green ones. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even some pleasure craft. They came anyway. The sight of the approaching Empire Armada was terrifying in its perfection. The hegemonic core's technological marvels led to formation, ships that looked like flying cities, their surfaces covered in weapon systems that could crack planets. Behind them came the Stellar Dominion's bioships, massive living creatures bred for war, their organic hulls pulsing with alien life and bristling with weapons that had evolved rather than been built. The Void Throne's dark vessels brought up the rear, their black hulls seeming to absorb the light of nearby stars. They are not just here to defeat us, Harrison muttered, watching the enemy formations tighten. They are here to make an example. The first wave hit like a hammer blow. Energy beams that could melt asteroids launched through space, vaporizing defending ships in seconds. The bio-cruisers launched swarms of living fighters, creatures that looked like giant insects with plasma cannon for stingers. The Void Throne ships unleashed something worse, waves of psychic energy that drove some human pilots insane with terror. Captain Stone coordinated the defense from a damaged fighter, weaving between enemy fire with a skill born of desperation. All units, concentrate fire on the bio-ship's neural clusters. Make them hurt. But for every Empire ship they damaged, 3 more took its place. The orbital defense platforms around Earth began exploding one by one. Civilian evacuation ships fled toward the outer planets, carrying refugees from the burning colonies on Mars and Europa. The darkest moment came when the first Empire bombardment ships broke through the defensive line and began targeting Earth cities. Harrison watched in horror as beams of pure destruction reached down from space, turning entire city blocks into glass. So, Stone's voice crackled through the static-filled comm. Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Brown is requesting permission for Operation Phoenix. Harrison closed his eyes for a moment. Operation Phoenix was their last desperate gamble, a suicide mission that might save the galaxy even if it couldn't save Earth. Granted, he said quietly. And Kevin, good luck. Lieutenant Colonel Brown's voice came through the comm from his captured Empire stealth ship, its biomechanical hull modified with human technology. Remember, team, we're not here to win this battle. We're here to end the war. His strike force was small, just 12 ships crewed by the best human commandos and forsaken warriors they had. While the galaxy watched Earth burn and the largest space battle in history raged around Sol, Brown's team slipped away through hyperspace toward the Empire homeworlds. The plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of attacking military targets, they would strike the foundations of Empire power, the slave camps, the genetic laboratories, the brainwashing facilities that turned free beings into obedient servants. Brown's first target was the hegemonic core's primary processing world, where captured species were cybernetically modified into perfect workers. His team materialized from hyperspace directly above the planet's main facility, a sprawling complex the size of a continent. Broadcasting in 3, 2, 1, reported technician Lisa Park as she activated the transmission equipment they'd built from forsaken technology and human ingenuity. The images that flooded the galactic communication networks were devastating. Children locked in cages, their minds being systematically erased and rebuilt. Entire species being processed like cattle, their natural abilities harvested for empire use. Worlds stripped completely bare to feed the endless hunger of the war machine. Commander Phillips' team hit the Stellar Dominion's breeding facilities next, exposing the horrific genetic experiments that created the Empire's living ships. The footage showed sentient beings being mutated into biological weapons, their consciousness trapped inside hulls designed for war. The most shocking target was the Void Throne's mental conditioning centers. Brown himself led the assault on the Dark Planet where the Empire's psychic masters had perfected the art of breaking minds. The images that emerged showed row upon row of beings connected to machines that drained their free will, turning proud warriors into mindless slaves. But the most powerful moment came when they broadcast from a simple slave camp on the edge of Empire space. The camera showed thousands of beings from hundreds of species, all wearing the same gray uniforms, all with the same dead look in their eyes. Until Brown's Marines cut their chains. The transformation was immediate and stunning. Eyes that had been empty for decades suddenly blazed with hope. Voices that had forgotten how to sing began crying out in joy. Hands that had only known labor reached toward the sky in celebration. The response across the galaxy was instant and overwhelming. On every Empire world, slaves who had seen the broadcast began to remember who they had been before the chains. Soldiers who had been conditioned to obey without question started asking why they were fighting. Even within the ruling caste, lower-ranking officers turned against their superiors. Back at Earth, the massive Empire fleet found itself facing something unprecedented, reports of uprisings on every world they controlled. Entire sections of their armada received emergency recall orders as their homeworlds erupted in revolution. Admiral Harrison watched through the shattered windows of Lunar Station as a seemingly invincible fleet began to break apart. Ships that had fought together for millennia turned their weapons on each other as crews chose sides. "So," Stone reported, amazement in her voice, "we're receiving surrender requests from over 300 Empire vessels. Their crews are asking for asylum." The war wasn't over, but something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had seen the truth about the empires, and that truth was spreading faster than any weapon could travel. Freedom, it turned out, was the most contagious force in the universe. Admiral Harrison's boots crunched through the crystalline debris that had once been the hegemonic core's most magnificent city. The capital of their technological empire now lay in ruins, but not from human weapons. The destruction had come from within. Slaves and workers rising up, tearing down the symbols of their oppression with their bare hands. Around him, medics from dozens of species worked side by side, treating wounds that went far deeper than flesh. A human doctor named Patricia carefully removed cybernetic control implants from a group of former slave soldiers, while a forsaken healer who looked like living starlight mended the broken minds of Empire victims. "Admiral," called Captain Diana as she approached through the rubble. Her uniform now bore the insignia of the newly formed Galactic Liberation Council. "The tribunal is ready." The makeshift courtroom had been set up in what was once the Emperor's throne room. The massive chamber with its towering pillars and holographic displays now served as a place of justice rather than tyranny. Representatives from every freed world sat in judgment. Former slaves, liberated soldiers, and human diplomats all united in purpose. At the center of it all sat the last emperor of the hegemonic core. Once, he had been the most powerful being in the galaxy, commanding fleets that could destroy stars. Now he was a withered figure, more machine than living creature, his organic parts sustained by the very technology he had used to enslave others. "I offer you a deal," the emperor wheezed, his mechanical voice box crackling with static. "Join us. Rule beside us. The galaxy needs order, and you primitives don't understand the burden of command." Harrison studied the pathetic figure before him, then looked at Diana, who had been elected as the first president of the Galactic Liberation Council by representatives from over 2,000 worlds. "We didn't fight to replace you," Harrison said simply. "We fought to make sure no one could ever replace you." The Emperor's cybernetic eyes flickered with genuine confusion. 10,000 years of absolute power had left him unable to comprehend any other way of thinking. "Then what do you want? Tribute? Territory? Slaves of your own?" "Freedom," Diana answered, her voice carrying the strength of someone who had never forgotten what it meant to be free. "For everyone." Judge Margaret Foster, formerly of Earth's Supreme Court and now Chief Justice of the Galactic Tribunal, stood to read the verdict. Her voice echoed through the chamber and across the galaxy via real-time broadcasts. "The 3 great empires are hereby dissolved," she announced. "Their leaders are found guilty of crimes against all sapient life. But more importantly, the caste system that divided the galaxy for millennia is abolished forever." The Emperor's last words are perhaps the most telling of all. Without us, the galaxy will descend into chaos. You need masters. No, Harrison replied quietly. We just needed to remember how to be free. The trials lasted for months, but they were only the beginning. The real work was rebuilding a galaxy that had forgotten how to govern itself. Worlds that had been slave colonies for centuries suddenly had to learn democracy. Species that had been bred for specific roles discovered they could choose their own paths. It wasn't easy. Some worlds struggled with the transition from tyranny to freedom. Others faced civil wars as different factions fought for control. But for every setback, there were a dozen success stories, worlds that bloomed with creativity once the Empire's rigid controls were removed. 5 years later, Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the observation deck of Liberty Station, the massive spaceport that now served as a capital of the Free Galaxy Alliance. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she watched an incredible sight. Ships from 1,000 different worlds coming and going freely, their crews trading, learning, and exploring together. A sleek Forsaken bioship docked next to a human cargo hauler, its crew eagerly trading art and music for Earth's coffee and chocolate. Nearby, a crystalline vessel from the old Void-Throne territory sparkled as it unloaded passengers, former telepathic slaves who were now free to use their abilities to heal rather than control. Hard to believe it's over, said Captain James Miller as he joined her at the window. The young lieutenant who had once served under her was now a captain himself, commanding one of the Alliance's exploration vessels. Rebecca smiled, watching a group of human children playing in the station's park with young beings from dozens of species. They chased each other through the artificial trees, their laughter echoing in languages both familiar and strange. It's not over, James. It's just beginning. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. There had been resistance, setbacks, and moments when it seemed like the old ways might return. But humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their stubborn refusal to accept that anyone should be left behind. In the Outer Rim, former slave worlds were becoming centers of learning and art. The mining planet Kiro 7 now produced beautiful sculptures alongside rare metals. New Harvest had become an agricultural paradise where dozens of species shared farming techniques that fed half the galaxy. The most remarkable change was in the people themselves. Beings who had spent their lives following orders were learning to think for themselves. Species that had been enemies for millennia were discovering they had more in common than they had ever imagined. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Rebecca activated the hologram, which showed Diana's familiar face, now marked with laugh lines rather than scars of war. Rebecca, we just received word from the Deep Survey. They've made contact with another cluster of isolated worlds. They want to join the Alliance. Rebecca nodded, unsurprised. The galaxy was vast, and there were still corners where the Empire's influence had never reached. Send them our standard package, the Charter of Rights, the trade agreements, and the cultural exchange programs. Already done. Oh, and Rebecca? They specifically asked for human advisors. They said they want to learn from the species that taught the galaxy how to be free. As the hologram faded, Rebecca looked out at the bustling station once more. The Forsaken were forsaken no more. In a galaxy where cooperation had replaced conquest, where diversity was celebrated rather than feared, neither was anyone else. The age of empires was over. The age of freedom had begun.